Today's episode is with Dominic Rubino. He's somebody who built and sold multiple companies, including a business coaching company that grew to over 120 million in annual revenue. From the outside, massive success story, travel, scaling globally, training coaches, building something significant. But our conversation isn't about how he scaled it. It's about a quiet dinner table moment with his son that forced him to rethink what success actually meant, and ultimately created the decision to walk away from growth at that level because it wasn't aligned with the dad he wanted to be. If you're building something and you have that internal driving go voice pushing you all the time, this episode might be for you. I hope you enjoy. Let's dive in. Here with Dominic Rubino. Super excited to have you on to chat about all things fatherhood and business. You are the owner of Profit Tool Belt. You've been involved in a lot of businesses and, as you said, business coaching. So I'm really excited to dive into that story and how that all unfolded as you had a family as well. So yeah, super excited to have you on, and we'll just kind of roll and just have some fun with this.
Excellent. Let's do it.
I guess where I'd love to start is your doorway into entrepreneurship. When did you first know you'd be an entrepreneur?
I didn't know the word for a long time. Entrepreneur didn't make any sense to me. I think it was just, I wanted to own my own business. And I remember looking at my uncle, who was a framer, like a framing carpenter. And I'd worked for him as a laborer a couple of years. He said, "Hey, can you come with me? We're stripping forms." And I'm like, I don't know any of those words. So what are we doing? And so I took a piece of wire to hold my hammer and my belt. Like I didn't have any tools. That's how I started working for my uncle. But I found out he owned something called a business. And I was like, what's that? And that's really the first time I thought like somebody could own a business and hire people. That was always in the back of my mind. And then, we did fundraisers at school where everybody got given boxes of licorice to go sell door to door. Well, the teacher didn't tell me how many to sell. They just gave me a bunch of boxes. And so I just walked until I sold them all. And then I came back the next day and, she's like, "Okay, how much money did you raise? Has anybody got, give us back the boxes?" Probably wasn't the next day looking back on it. But anyways, I gave her back just all the money. And she's like, "Well, do you have any boxes left?" I'm like, "No, I sold them all." And everybody else had either, eaten their candies and still so owed the school money or, whatever. But yeah, I sold them all. So nothing ever occurred to me different. So then my first real company was a Christmas light installation company called the Yo Ho Ho Light Co.
I like it.
Grade 11, grade 12. You got to think, I live in the Pacific Northwest, raining, cedar shake roofs, borrowing my dad's aluminum ladder, stapling electric lights. I should be dead.
Yep.
Yeah. That's kind of how I started.
And was that spark, like if I was to ask your parents, would they have seen that like really early on? That kind of leadership and initiative?
Yeah. My dad would always joke, and my dad, both my parents are new immigrants to the country. They came with nothing. And my dad would always joke, if I gave you $100 and I gave your brother $100, your brother would say, "Where's the next $100?" And you'd go, "Dad, look, I made $1,000 out of that $100 you gave me." But not because it's just how I think and how I went about doing things. Yeah.
And what was entrepreneurship like in your family? Did you come from an entrepreneurial family, or was that something new?
Yeah. So my kitchen table was not entrepreneurial. My mom worked for the city in the building department. So I used to joke with her that she manufactured red tape. That was her job. And my dad was a shop steward at he was a journeyman fabricator and welder. But my larger family had a couple of business people in it. And I always looked up to them. And it just always sounded so cool to own a business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then, so you had the Christmas light company. Where did you go from there?
Well, after the Christmas light company, I don't want to go through all of them, but, I ended up going to university. I had a chance to go to university, which in itself is a funny story because here I am, a business coach and a business owner, and my degree is in archaeology. That makes even less sense now. Makes sense to me because that's how my life went. But during university, I actually became a student painter, which is incredible experience. Looking back on it, at the time, it was like boxing with the tonsils of a dragon. Like it was just so hard, so incredibly hard. So I would say to anybody out there listening, if you have a chance to hire somebody who was a student painter, that they've got the grind in them. because it's a grind. You've got to start a business, get work in progress, collect on everything, and shut that same business down over the course of a summer. Didn't you paint, Fife?
Yeah, I'm like
Yeah, there you go. I see
tingling
the
a little
smile on
bit.
your
I'm
face.
tingling
Yeah,
a little bit.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, yeah, I feel that. And like so many of my friends are still like long-term friends came from that time. Like
yeah.
very much some bonding through suffering
Shared
alongside each other.
suffering. Yeah. And does it make sense boxing with the tonsils of a dragon? I mean, you're just in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But in hindsight, yes, very much I look back with fond memories. But at the time, you were talking about like cedar shakes and aluminum ladders. I was like having flashbacks.
I know. Me too. But at the same time, I really enjoyed it. And I learned a lot, which I think is the biggest takeaway because I probably didn't make great money. I didn't do the things I now know are so critical for a contractor, which is keeping track of the numbers, which sounds like everybody's going to shake their head and go, of course, this guy's going to say keeping track of the numbers. But you don't have to keep track of all the numbers, just the important numbers. And
Yeah.
they're not the ones your accountant tells you. Those are maybe 3 of them.
What for you are the most important numbers?
Well, the numbers get broken down into categories, right? Like how many leads, how many new opportunities do we have? How many jobs are we winning? Out of the jobs we're winning, what are the gross profit, net profit margins? Then we've got some production figures. And then you've got the accountant figures, which is, again, net and gross and net profit margin at the bottom there. Too many people focus just on, the balance sheet and income statement. Those are important, but they're kind of a side picture to me versus the flow of the entire business. So those are the key numbers I have to know. What's our work in progress? What's our work pending? Where are our consistent challenges? Those should be setting off either red flags, green flags, or yellow flags. And I know then which ones to chase and which ones I can just take a pass on this week.
Yeah. The accounting side is very lagging. You don't necessarily have a good pulse on what's happening in real time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And so hopefully everybody listening understands, and I think they do, the difference between a lagging indicator and a leading indicator. But a leading indicator is something that is before, and a lagging indicator is something that's after. So I'll tell you, as I'm a business coach. It doesn't mean I know everything. I know less now than I did when I was younger. I'll start with that. But if I talk to somebody and they're like, well, I don't know my annual sales figure because it's not March. I haven't gotten my taxes back from April. I'm like, oh my God, you're on a 1-year breathing cycle. You can't do that. You need that information faster to make those decisions. That's lagging. You're waiting for something. You're waiting for the horse to have left the barn, galloped over the hill, and fallen off a cliff. That's a lagging indicator. Oh, should have closed the door. Right? So a leading indicator would be, did we do our walkthrough at night and make sure the door was closed?
Yeah.
I just made that analogy up, if it makes sense or not.
No, I can run with that.
Yeah.
That works. I want to go back to a bit of your journey though. Just kind of like segue there into something that felt relevant. So student painter, I know you had some other roles, and then I was looking on LinkedIn and you had Canada Pharmacy, which I was curious to know a bit more about.
Sure.
And then definitely want to learn more about Focal Point business coaching and like what that story was for you.
Yeah. Well, if you think the story's crazy that I'm an archaeologist who's become a 2-time company selling business coach, then, all that other stuff's not going to make sense either. Remember earlier I said I don't see myself as an entrepreneur? It's because I used to get Amwayed a lot. Do you ever get Amwayed?
I think I know what you mean, but
yeah,
maybe explain it to people.
Well, I'd get invited to these workshops or meetings. Hey, come to this meeting. It's an entrepreneurs meeting. And I always wanted to go, right? And then I go there and suddenly somebody drags out a whiteboard and they draw the 3 circles. And I'm like, oh no, it's an Amway presentation or Worldwide Dream Builders or some other multi-level marketing thing. By the way, I'm not knocking it. We've got a really good friend of our family who's done incredibly well in that. It's just not my thing. And I don't want to be in that room. And it's not my shtick. So those people always call themselves entrepreneurs. And I thought, well, I better not be an entrepreneur because everybody's going to think this guy is going to pull out that whiteboard in a living room somewhere. And, and again, not knocking it. It's just not for me. So
it's funny how I have a lot of conversations with people, and I'm using the term dadpreneur, but how dad, like, people can receive quite easily. But the entrepreneur label, I think, is tough for some people. And there's a lot of different meanings associated with it. I'd be curious to understand how you see that term and what you'd maybe label yourself as.
Yeah. So I think the and I can only talk about this from my own perspective. There's no scientific basis of this. The brain of Dom is there's a lot of imposter syndrome that goes along with people. Well, I'm not an entrepreneur until I've made it or until I've sold the company. I've sold 2 or 3 companies now, and I've helped tons of clients sell their companies. And I'm still hesitant to say I'm an entrepreneur. I think because the word's like 95 letters long and it sounds very pretentious, and I don't even spell it right. I think it's French. I'm just a guy. I build businesses. I sell businesses. I show people how to build and sell their companies and how to get great money doing it. What's the translation of that? It doesn't have to be entrepreneur, but the person who's just starting out saying, I've got a vinyl sign cutting business in my garage is just as valid. They're just in a different stage of their growth. Just because they haven't sold it, maybe just because they're not even profitable yet, they're still out there trying to create something from nothing.
Mm-hmm. And I respect that at any stage.
Yeah, I do too. Because it's cojones, 100%. Leaving the safety of a job. How many people have said that to you, Fife? Like, oh, well, I've got a job. I can't really leave it. It's too risky to be an entrepreneur, too risky to have my own business. No, it's not. I'll tell you what's risky. I'm not going to mention any company names. Let's just call it Acme Corp, right? Spending 25 years working at Acme Corp and getting up to some senior level manager, VP, director, whatever it is. And they walk in one day and say, hey, we got bought. We don't need you anymore. You have one job. You are 100% at risk of that company letting you go anytime they want. If you are a business person and you've got 10 accounts that each bring you $2,500 a month, you got 25 grand a month coming in. If you lose one client, okay, go get another client. Mm-hmm. To me, it's less risky, far less risky being a business owner and being in control of my own destiny. And that's probably the driver for me. I do not want to be out of control of my own destiny.
Yeah. Tell me a bit more about Canada Pharmacy.
So it's a long story. So, I'll give you the edited version and you can dig where you like.
Yeah.
Okay. So I was still working for Sprint. So when I left university, I went into the corporate world because that's what you do. You just get in line, put on the tie and the suit, you go learn, right? Well, I was lucky to get in with Sprint, and Sprint was like gladiator training for sales training. You either made it or you didn't, and they trained the heck out of you. And then when you were really tired, they trained you some more. So I was very fortunate to be trained there. And I made it to be the regional sales manager for the Prairie region. But I was super bored in my job. So I started selling used junk on eBay. And when I say junk, I mean junk. Like, I'm old, Fife. I don't know if you can see the color of my hair, but this would have been in 98, 99 when eBay was a brand new company, brand new. And so we were selling used LED calculators and ColecoVision head-to-head and Pong games and systems. Atari, like all of those things. Not because I cared about the games, but because people would buy them. So if I bought a used LED calculator at a flea market or a garage sale for $1, I could sell it online to a collector for 40. That's good margins. Problem is you can't find enough of them. And so over time, I transformed that business into selling used books. Now, there's a bit of a crossover here because none of the stories are perfect. It's not a perfect cookie cutter surgical stop to one thing and a ending of another. At this point, I had left Sprint and I'd bought a franchise to be a business coach. And this franchise was based out of Australia. And you got to remember, back in the year 2000, the word business and coach did not even go together.
Coach was still probably very underused.
Yeah,
compared to what it is today.
Right. Now everybody's a coach. Like I'm a shoe selection coach. Like, okay, you work at a shoe store, right? Everybody's a coach for something. But back then, business coach it wasn't even a sentence. It couldn't be used in a sentence. But that's where I started. And I got trained out of this billionaire in Australia who had this franchise. And I started to learn what to do. I'm applying everything I learned at this franchise to the local market. And I'm getting great clients. My first 2 clients, one of them made pool tables and the other one made caskets, like coffins. But they're in woodworking, right? That's why I'm in woodworking now, because I really understand that trade. And I do all sorts of other construction businesses because of my background, but those were my first 2. Anyways, I'm doing really well as a franchisee. So remember, I'm running this business as a franchisee. I'm also selling used stuff on eBay. As a franchisee, I'm getting business coaching clients and I'm getting results with my clients. So the franchise is having their annual conference and they're like, hey, that Rubino guy's doing good. Why don't we have him as a speaker? And he's doing really good at selling, at marketing and selling. Let's have him talk about marketing and selling at the big conference, the global conference. So I get to go on stage. Before I go on stage, another guy comes up to me and says, hey, listen, I got a client who won't return my phone calls. Can you tell me how to sell him on business coaching? And I don't know if you heard the mistake in that guy's sentence right there. I'm like, you just said you have a client who won't return your phone calls. You got some head trash, buddy. That's not a client. It's not a prospect. It's not even a suspect. You got to figure out what the driver is for that person before you can call them anything. He's like, yeah, Dom, just tell me what to do, how to sell them. So I said, well, tell me about his business. So it turned out he sold mail order medications from Canada to the United States, which is totally legal, right? We're not selling crazy stuff. You're just selling, in Canada, the pricing model is different than in the United States. So a bottle of aspirin here might be, let's just say $20. That same bottle of aspirin in the United States requires a prescription, which the person has to pay $25 for, and might cost them $60. But it's the same bottle. Aspirin's a bad example, but you choose any medication you want. And it's just a function of our politics. Just that's the difference. So anyways, I call my cousin, who happens to be my partner when we're doing this goofy little thing, selling stuff on eBay, and we're selling books. We moved from selling junk to books. And can you imagine what two Italian cousins sound like arguing on the phone?
I can try and picture it, but
more of a Sopranos vibe is what it sounds like, right?
Yeah.
So I call my cousin. I'm like, hey, do you know we can do this stuff? And he's like, what are you talking about? We can't do that stuff. I'm being very polite right now. I'm like, no, we can do that stuff. And he's like, no, we can't. I'm like, listen to me, smart guy. And he goes, I'm not listening to you, smart guy. And anyways, I hang up the phone. I go on stage. I'm at a global conference and I talk about sales and marketing and business coaching, professional services. I come off stage and I call my cousin back. And he goes, I can't talk to you, which is a very polite version of what he said. We just sold a bottle of, I can't remember what it was, Motrin or something like that. And we made $45. And now I've got to go buy it from Costco. So we flipped the inventory model right around without even knowing it. We would sell stuff without even owning it and then just go to Costco and get it. Anyways, the long story is I turned that business from zero in sales, zero in anything, to 120 million in sales annually. And then I sold it.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a long story, but I gave you that.
Yeah. And are kids in the picture at any point at this stage?
No, they're not there.
Not yet.
Not there. Yeah, not yet.
Okay.
So I'm married at this point.
So 0 to 120.
Yeah. 120 US. You're in Canada, right, Fife?
Yeah. I'm in Canada.
So, yeah. 120 million US in sales.
What was the most stressful period of time for you in that?
The partnership. It was my cousin was one partner, then we brought in another guy, and it was oil and water. It didn't work. And so at one point, maybe this goes to your entrepreneur question earlier. Good question, Fife. I decided to leave because I didn't have to stay. I knew I could reinvent myself.
Tell me about that process of that decision.
As much as I can, if you don't mind.
Whatever you feel like sharing.
Yeah.
But I think the reason I ask that is I think a lot of people will go through something like that where it's like, do I leave this thing? Do I shut it down? And I think there's a process that people go through in order to make really big decisions, and just kind of tapping into what you'd be sharing to somebody else as they're trying to figure out how to make some kind of really big decision that is potentially life altering.
I think it comes down to something I already said here is I need to be in control of my own destiny. And when other people are controlling it, I'm not so happy. So I'd rather be a small fish in a small pond, but it's my pond and I'm the fish. That's, I've never taken a penny of outside financing, unless you count Visa or not putting food on my family's table. But I've never had an outside investor because, again, I don't want somebody telling me what to do. I know what the plan is, and fail or succeed, it's going to be me. So that wasn't the case at the pharmacy. So I put an offer on the table and we all had a discussion and they said, okay, we'll buy you, because I could have bought them. They could have bought me. And really, at the end of the day, it came down to a difference in values and how you treat people, other people, and trust. So I didn't have those things. So why stay? So I left. And then it took me about a year, but I bought another company, and that's when I became business partners with Brian Tracy, and I owned Focal Point Business Coaching.
And for those listening, who is Brian Tracy?
Oh, so he's an author that people would have heard or read. Granted, he's a little older now, but in the 80s and 90s, people would flock to convention centers to see him speak. And he talks about sales and marketing and personal improvement and personal development. And he was a very big brand back then. He's written 70 or 80 books. I think the most famous is Eat That Frog, but there's a number of other very powerful books there. The Psychology of Selling, The Psychology of Achievement, and so many others. Anyways, I became partners with, I bought the franchise rights for the world from him. I became the global master franchisor of his business coaching concept. And I took that from 6 franchisees to 237 franchisees. And I sold that.
What was the most fun part of that for you?
Actually training business coaches and seeing them succeed in a local market. I'd get a crazy phone call from a coach in, let's say, California. It didn't matter, wherever they are. And they go, hey, I just got a new client. I'm like, oh, it's great. Yeah, they're a dry cleaner. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that's interesting. And they're like, no, you don't understand. It's a 24-hour dry cleaner with like 37 employees. They got X many trucks. They serve this market and their revenues are 4 million. I'm like, okay, that's not what I think a dry cleaner is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then seeing the success of our clients has always been a driver for me. So not just the coach's success, but what we're able to do for other people. That's big.
What is that ripple impact on the larger community, if you will?
That's a very good question. So I was just at an Alex Hormozy training. Are you familiar with Alex Hormozy?
Yeah.
So I went down to Vegas. I'm in one of his coaching programs, and I was talking with some other coaches because they break you up into cohorts, right? So I was talking to some other coaches there, and we were talking about that same thing. What's the impact of coaching? You get paid. Seems like a good business. And I stopped everybody. I'm like, you got to think of the bigger picture. Right now, my daughter's 20. So let's say that she gets married and has her first kid by the time she's 30. Okay, so now dial that forward 30 years when her child has a child, right? So that's going to be my great-grandchild. That great-grandchild is now going to turn 30. And at some point, they're going to be sitting at a college campus having a discussion with their friend who's running a landscaping company or an app business, right? So we're talking about 90 years from now. And their friend is going to be having a problem in business. And that my great-great-grandchild is going to say, you know what my grandpa Dom always said? And they're going to pass on some wisdom that to me is just a throwaway piece of, it's just part of another conversation, right? For instance, what I say to myself when no one is listening is what the world sees when everyone is watching. That's a driver for me. So let's say that my great, that passes through my family. That's going to impact that kid running that lawn mowing company or that app or whatever they're doing 90 years from now. So the impact of what we do as coaches, and that includes you, Fife, is way more than just saying, yeah, they're going to sell more paper at Staples. It's huge.
Yeah. And that's what lights me up too, is the people impact, not just like, oh, how big is the business? Or it's like business is people. And like, what is the impact that has? And how does that change people's lives by being a part of that?
Yeah. A business only exists to solve problems for people. And we get paid to do that. Whatever your problem is. I don't have gas in my car. Well, there's a business that exists to solve that problem. It's a gas station, right? I don't have time to mow my lawn. I don't know how to build my own kitchen cabinets. Well, there are businesses that exist to solve that problem, and we get paid for that.
What was the biggest struggle for you through building Focal Point?
Well, this actually leads to how you and I first started talking about this episode. The biggest struggle for me was the impact on my family, which I was ignoring for a very long time. I didn't realize that I was like sucking that life out of them because I traveled a lot for that business, like a lot.
How much?
So I could give you statistics or I could tell you a story. Do you want the statistics or the story?
Both.
Okay, so
I'll start with the story, but maybe some stats too, just to let's frame it.
Yeah. So the story is I was a regular at Terminal 2 in the Phoenix Airport, TGIF. And I was getting invited to the birthday parties of the staff at the hotel because I was there so much. Like I was invited to their homes for the birthday party of the porter, the bellman. That's when you know you're traveling too much. When you're part of their regular day at that hotel or at the TGIF at the Terminal 2 at the Phoenix Airport, you're there too much.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the statistics, I was traveling like 2 weeks out of a month, living in hotels. I had all the airline points you wanted. As soon as they breathe into the microphone, it's time for boarding. They're like, Mr. Rubino, you can come and sit now. That ridiculous stuff, which sounds great on a TV show, but living it's not good. For me, wasn't good.
Yeah. What was the impact on you?
Let me tell you the story. The impact, I could say it a bunch of ways that don't make any sense, but maybe this one make the most sense to me. So we had received an offer to buy the business and we said no. So I went home that night for dinner and I'm sitting at the table with my lovely family. My wife sits right next to me and then my son sits next to her and my daughter sits across. And so we're all sitting there and my wife says, normal conversation. How was your day at work? And I said, well, somebody offered to buy the company. And she's like, oh my God, this is great. Sell this thing because I'm traveling all the time, right? And I said, no, 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 we're not ready to be sold. All my business talk. We're not ready to be sold. Maximum capitalization, enterprise value. But then, like a dummy, I roll into my normal conversation. Honey, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave Sunday night. I'm traveling to San Diego next week. I'm going to leave Sunday night. The kids won't even know I'm gone, but I'll come back Thursday night. So it'll be like I wasn't even missing, but I'll be there Friday for the kids. And sounded normal to me. But my son is sitting next to my wife and he didn't say anything. He's maybe 9. And he just shrunk in his skin. His shoulders dropped, his head dropped. And I was looking at him. He didn't see me. And I'm not going to swear on the show, Fife, but I was like, Rubino, what the are you doing? Because my son was, being impacted. And if I look back, I didn't see his first steps. I wasn't there for his first swimming lesson. Same with my daughter. Like, oh, I'm a traveling dad. I'm running a business. I'm, big shot. No, I'm not. Nobody cared that I was at that meeting. Nobody cared. That doesn't go on your tombstone. He got so many airline points. I get to be their dad. That's the way I look at it. So anyways, I walked in the next day to my company and said to my partner, I'm selling. And that caused a bit of a poop storm, as you might imagine. But here I am now, happier than I've ever been.
What was, if you're working and traveling that much, I'd expect burnout to be present, or was it?
Yeah.
This is a funny thing that I've noticed with a lot of entrepreneurs. It's like, I don't know if they just don't recognize burnout or if they just have a different gear or if it just shows up differently. But I'd be curious, like your take on that side of things, like the physical, personal impact of that level of work.
I think you answered it already. Different gear, not recognizing it shows up in other ways. I only have this gear, so I don't know. I don't really know. But, like we were talking about earlier, I pre-plan the things I want to do. So that epic hike in Vietnam, it took 2 years to plan. That is a hobby in itself. Planning that underground 3-day hike through the caves of Vietnam is pretty cool. And now it's done. So what's next? Well, now it's this hunting trip, which I'm going on this weekend. Well, what's next? Cambodia. What's next? After that, I'm doing a trip, another rally from Central Europe to Central Africa. We got to go there, buy the vehicle, outfit the vehicle, and then hop in the car and drive it to Africa and then sell it. That in itself is going to, there's a million adventures inside that adventure.
Mm-hmm.
So, my big thing in my mind right now is what am I going to do in 2030, 2032, 2036? I don't know.
Yeah. Do you do anything spontaneous? Or is everything pretty planned and controlled?
Well, I have a family, right? So the spontaneity right now is gone because my son plays very high level lacrosse. And so it's tournament after tournament after tournament after tournament, which is great because, seeing your kid excel at what they do, nothing better. And my daughter is 19, so she's kind of more set on her path. She's a lifeguard. She's going to the school of her dreams. And so she's settled into that groove for the next 4 years. But yeah, the only spontaneous thing I might do is say, I've got nothing this weekend. I'm going hunting.
What have been some of the parallels for you between being a dad and a business owner? And what I mean by that is maybe since becoming a dad, how has that made you better as a leader or a business owner?
Being a dad and being a business leader or owner, probably more empathy, more empathy than when I was young and we're going to do this, just barreling through everything without realizing the impact on somebody's life when they say, I got to go. It's my daughter's birthday. Like that's a real thing. I never assume anybody's lying to me. If they got to go home for their daughter's birthday, to me, that's a big thing. So there's probably some softening there for me, but I'll tell you what, I could give up being a business owner, but I would never give up being a dad.
What about the flip side? How being a business owner helped you be a
better dad? I think if I look at both my kids, they've been impacted by me being a business owner and hearing it, for that period of time when we had to work at home from COVID. My son got to listen to everything through the door. And I hear him talking to his buddies. They're on a bus. He plays very high level lacrosse. So they get, a stipend now when they travel. And so I've heard him talking to his buddies, like, you only got $20. You can't buy that on the way there. And you're not going to have any money for the way back. So that's him talking about planning and strategy a little bit. And he's done a bunch of other things. So maybe that has overlain on that, but I don't know. I don't know. The two have to be there. I just can't figure out in my mind how they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, I wish I had a better. I feel like I'm letting you down.
No, that's like part of what I like in these conversations is exploring, like not having a set answer
Right.
and not having just like exploring. Like
Good. Okay. Yeah.
that's what I enjoy.
You can edit all this part out and say,
Yeah,
Tom
but it's real. Yeah, it's real, and I think that's what I enjoy listening to as well. And I'm trying to make something that I would want to listen to as much as other people too. How do you define success?
Really, my family's happiness. You could put a whole bunch of numbers to it, but I just want, when I come in the door, I want everybody to hug and kiss, and when I leave, I want everybody to say goodbye. And to me, that's success. It really is more important to me to be a dad and a good husband than it is to be a, knock it out of the park business person, even though that's what I strive for. And I don't even know why I do that. It's the only gear I have. Go. Somebody asked me once, this was like an exercise at an entrepreneurs group, a business group. It was just an opening exercise. But I think we have to write down what the quiet voice in your head says when it's at its quietest. And I remember writing on my paper just the word go with exclamation mark after it. I'm like, I don't have a quiet moment in my head. It's just screaming at me, go.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Thinking of what mine would be.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit with that one. I'll maybe send you a text or an email after once I'm in a quiet space to see.
Yeah. What's the quiet voice in your head say when you're at a quiet time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Probably something like, this is nice. Yeah.
I find that's what happens when I go fishing though, or hunting, is that I'm just out there. There's nobody to talk to. And so now I'm just casting the rod. Let's say I'm fly fishing. It's just me in the river. I don't have to talk. I don't even have to sing to myself. That is actively doing nothing, but that's the calmest my mind is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What would you look back at your time building these businesses, being in this go mode? If anything, would you do differently?
I would have sold both companies sooner. There's some hiring decisions I would have made quicker, and also firing decisions I would have made quicker. And I'm not talking about employees. I'm talking about like consultants or agencies that I've hired to do things. And the older I get, the shorter that trigger or the shorter that fuse is. I'm here to do a job. I know what my job is. If I'm not doing that job, I expect to be terminated. I don't know why it's a surprise to other people when they're not performing that I terminate them. But this isn't working. You got to go. There's no explanation. I don't need an explanation. That's it.
Mm-hmm. And the whole like leaving the businesses earlier, how would you help somebody see that? Like, you're a coach, you probably work with a lot of people that have maybe been in similar spots.
Yeah.
And I think everything's so much easier in hindsight.
It's easier in hindsight, and it's easier when you're not in it. We deal with tons of family businesses. I think the only other industry that has more family businesses is the restaurant industry, and we don't coach that industry. Right. But ours, there's tons of family businesses. And that requires a level of maturity and respect on the part of the coach to understand there's nuances there that can't be unteased. So it's a longer process. It's a structured process. We have a path that we know we're going to follow, but it takes patience. It takes consistency, and it takes respect, because that family, whatever their last name is going to exist beyond the business. So you have to tease that apart the way that they want it, in, respectfully, but properly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, apart is the wrong word. That assumes that we're going to break them apart. I just mean you have to tease apart what their goal is, and then how they implement it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's been the most difficult client, like within confidentiality, but like a really, really challenging client that you were able to turn around? And like, what would be some of like the really big kind of levers that have helped you do that?
So it's a great question. So the thing that we work really hard on at the front of the relationship is fit. So we look for indications of fit. We're at a point now, and I'm happy to be here. We're not worried about the next client coming in. If they're not right, we don't want them. And, we're never rude to somebody. We just return calls slower and emails later, and they just sort of go off and find somebody else, right? But if they're not right, or if they're not coachable or open to coaching, then we're not going to be their people, because you've heard the voice in my head already. I'm holding myself back, and my team is as well. They're all wired like me. So, there's that up in the beginning, but then there's generally different buckets of need that a business has. And I don't know what is inside those buckets. I just know the buckets are there. And so what my team and I are trained to do is go in and understand what's in the buckets and what's the priority order. And then when we know that, then the tools come out, right? So I'll tell you the buckets right now. This is consistent, hasn't changed for years. I want to get fancier, but I can't, right? The buckets that business owners deal with are time, team, money, growth, exit, marketing, or sales. And you and I could talk for days and you could challenge me. What about this? What about that? And I'll tell you that goes into one or two of those buckets at the same time, right? So those are the things. Now, what are the tools in money? Well, there's 1,000 tools for contractors in how to get more profitable or stop your profit leaks or how to estimate properly, right? But some of those cross over into the people side. How do we train people to do estimating properly? How do we maintain our gross profit margins? How do we know our net profit margins? Does our bookkeeper get us our reports on time? All of those things, then they start to intermingle. So it's always a combination of things, right? Have you got kids, Fife?
Yep. Got a 3-year-old daughter.
Oh, nice. Is she into, putting things together in like little toys and figurines?
Very recently, yes. More so, I was going to say more. It's just taking stuff out and just all over the place versus
Cute.
putting
That's
stuff
so
together.
Cute. That's so cute. That's awesome. I could see a little toddler running around with diapers on, just yanking things out of drawers.
Yeah.
But at some point, she's going to start to make little pieces of the world. She's going to take a bunch of her dolls and set up a scene, right? And so I'll use Lego because I'm a guy. Imagine buying a big thing of Lego. You just bought it at a flea market. It's $25, but it's a huge blue tub of Lego. That's just opportunity. Like, that's exciting, right? I could put that together any way I want, but there's a million combinations. And that's what business coaching is. What's the right way to use all of the tools if each of them was a piece of Lego to make it the thing you want? One guy's going to make a Star Wars thing. Another guy's going to make a crane. And another person's just going to jump up and down on them or put them under their parents' feet and laugh as they walk on. I don't know what they're going to do. But everybody's got a different goal with that same bucket. It's the same thing in coaching.
So I've got a couple last questions to wrap us up. What kind of legacy do you want to leave for your kids by being a business owner, entrepreneur, dad?
I think the legacy I want my kids, obviously, and my family to be taken care of. I don't want them to have a silver spoon. I want them to fight and struggle for what they had so they appreciate it. But I do want, my goal is to have the church full when I'm gone, and I want everybody sad. Like, you don't want them going, thank God that guy's gone. Whew, I'm here, but I don't want to be here. I really want, I want to have left enough impact on the world that people are like, wow, he really made a difference. So if I get to the point where I donate a wing of a hospital, or I'm able to donate $1 million, who do I have to be to donate $1 million, to give away $1 million? That would be legacy.
Impact.
Yeah. Impact, legacy. But most importantly is my family.
Yeah. And if you were to listen to this recording 6 months from now, what would you want to remind yourself of?
So I'm thinking about my hunt list right now. It's like, because I'm going in 2 days, right? I would remind myself to pack X, Y, and Z. I just can't think of it right now. I don't know. Probably stay humble, keep learning. Don't act like you have all the answers. You don't. I don't have all the answers.
Well, that's something I'd want to acknowledge you for. Like, I've known you for a very short amount of time, but just hearing the depth of your experience and like what you've done, you still really bring a beginner's mind, and you still feel very grounded and wanting to learn, going to things to understand, and not resting on your laurels, as they say.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
And I'm assuming that's a huge part of why you've been successful as well.
Yeah. Or maybe not as successful as I could have been. You never know. Right?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on, and would love to open the floor to you to share where people can find you.
Sure.
And yeah, just leave that to you.
Okay. Well, thank you. I mean, in the days of social media, if you can't find me, you're really not looking. Right. But my full name is Dominic Rubino. And so you can find me on LinkedIn. I have a podcast like you do, a podcast and YouTube channel, but they're not called Dominic Rubino. So the podcasts are very specific. So be prepared to laugh, folks. The one podcast is called Cabinet Maker Profit System. And that audience there is pretty well defined: cabinet makers, architecture millworkers, closet companies. And the other one is called Profit Tool Belt. And that one is for the trades in general: electricians, plumbers, home renovators. We've got lots of builders and renovators that listen to that show and that follow us there, but all trades. Because it really, at the end of the day, it's about the business of the contracting business. And I really want to elevate that. And I don't want people to just be a contractor who goes from job to job. I want them to understand that they're building a company that happens to be a electrician, happens to be a cabinet shop, happens to be a plumber.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
And have a good luck on your hunting trip.
My trip. Yeah. Thanks, Fife. Great to be with you.
All right.